It looks like I have the last two presentations, and I ended up I have a bunch of slides that pertain to either one of those, interleaved somehow. So let's see what they look like. Some of them are bookending. In other words, we'll see some slides I showed you this morning as we get some closure. And the intent is to talk about mostly about things ahead of us that have to do with the needed synthesis and continuing impact of the project. But before I start the slides, I'm sure I'm not alone after a whole day of hearing these talks at having a renewed sense of pride or amazement at the breadth and depth of the work we've done. And that's because of everybody in this room and many of us who can't be here right now with us, who have been working so hard and continue to work so hard. It's fantastic. So just for everyone in the group, clap for yourselves. This is called Synthesis and Legacy. I'm going to speak from slides. My major professor, one of my major professors, Dave Pimentel, used to start all his talks by saying, I'll be speaking from slides. This is kind of weird because nowadays everybody speaks from slides. And what was he talking about? But I'm going to speak from them. $20 million versus $21 million. One of our mantras. There's a lot of things that can explain why I think not only we can answer this question with what you've seen all day today. What we did was much more in-depth and integrating and synthesizing than 21 million projects could do. What's another thing that makes this different than 21 million dollar projects? Diane Daly Larson. Sometimes called tooth puller in chief. We're not used to it. And she, as you know, is on the line and on your email to remind you to get used to it and contribute and work together because it takes a lot. It's a lot of extra effort. They call this the extra cost that is associated with doing interdisciplinary work. And we all have paid that cost, and thank you very much for doing it. The challenges to the transdisciplinary integration that we put in our proposal, and that those words are in there, have continually come to our attention through the project. And we've been challenged by it, and we're still not there. I mean, when I showed you, we've got different disciplines, motivations, assumptions, goals, spatial and temporal scales of interest. That panel that we just had, people were sitting there with very different spatial scales and temporal scales that they're interested in working on, geographic, institutional, disciplinary divides, and identifying the project-wide integrated scholarly work, useful regionally, nationally, and globally, that can come out of that. And a lot of people spoke today, proudly. And the context, of course, is this. This is from Charlie Walhall et al.'s book on climate change and agriculture in the U.S., reminding us that it is this system that we're interested in and this system to which our research and efforts have to pertain, and that's what requires the integration. How did we do it? This is one of the pictures. You seen this picture before? I've somehow seen it. So this is one representation of the REACCH project. There's our stakeholder advisory group. These are our objective teams. These are teams that we built into the project in an attempt to think, how are we going to integrate across these different potential silos and get something that's synthetic? And some of them worked better than others, and some of them are still just beginning to work, like AEZ. I didn't change it to AEC. But these are integrating frameworks, and we're still trying to use them. And all the transdisciplinary products that I was able to show earlier today are ones that are submitted, or maybe one and are in the final stages. In other words, when we get to year 6, we're still doing it. We're still trying to do it. So we're going to have to keep trying if we believe in that, even beyond the end of REACH. What we did is create a bunch of things that weren't really in the proposal that popped up, and we put them in as clouds, as things that we didn't really conceive of that have been providing good frameworks for integration, like the representative agricultural pathways that Hong Leong talked about in the previous session, have really provided us with a great framework for pulling together some integration. The producer survey, student extension projects, the calculators and visualization tools that Catherine's talked about, these were not really in the proposal. They were invented by us as we sought ways to do integration. So we're going to have to keep doing it. These are some projects. This is a slide from this morning. These things are in the works. They are truly integrating. They're the kind of transdisciplinary work we want to see. And in our discussion after break today, as a project, we want to, I think, visit more what those could, and products like that could look like. And I also think we should ask some other questions that we maybe haven't asked, that we could still pursue outside of funding because they're interesting and important. We have a number of different modeling frameworks that have produced different projections about what's happening in the region in the future. What do we do about that? We can, if you look in the impacts book, in fact, one of the editors noted, hey, there's 2 impacts in here, and one says decreased fallow in the future, and the other one says increased fallow. What should I do about that? And so I said, hold on, and I had a little email with Dave and Claudio about what to do, and we decided to just let it stand. This is the way it is. The models say different things. That's instructive. That's an opportunity for us, but we need to get down there and understand it. Like the 4th graders need to understand why they can say spring wheat's better, winter wheat's better. These are different outcomes, different sets of assumptions, different expectations, maybe different settings. So I hope, despite the fact that there's not a full year 7 of funding of any, that we are motivated to stay on track to find those synthesis points. Special issue. I get to show some more slides of the website because my titles are interleaved here. This is the legacy part, but this is also about continuing the integration. So we already saw this from Paul. This website, which started, as you heard, from Christie's efforts to move it from what was useful for us as a project to what will be useful for future people who are interested in the REACCH project and its legacy. If you haven't visited it, how many have visited it? Oh, that's really great. Go there, because it's not full yet. There's other opportunities for you as team leaders to identify things that you think belong there, because they belong in the legacy that we leave online. And this can also be not just a digital archive, but there's still some liveliness left in here. We can still use it. If you upload things, that makes it dynamic. You already saw what happens if you drill down into the climate pages, so I won't show that, although I think that's an interesting one, but do drill down, take a look. And the biological ones. This is what I wanted to get to, is that we are moving all of the publications into, I guess I can do here. So under products, you click there, publications. Just pull down. And they're not all there yet, but they're going to be. And it's a searchable database like this that's right at that level, not too many clicks down. And we need your papers in there. We need the papers that you've already published, that we have. And in the years to come, because there are many things still in the pipeline, we would very much like to host these here so that the REACCH project ends up with a full record of its impacts in publications, accessible this way. And when they can be, they're linked to, if they're online publications or something, you can click to it. It's very easy to use. And there's a little Boolean capability there so you can do some different kinds of searches. The international conference, some of you attended this. Transitioning cereal systems to adapt to climate change. Had these conference goals: establish a global network of research teams and address the effects of climate change on cereal systems in semi-arid regions. So starting with that point, the idea is, yes, this is regional approaches to climate change, which is part of something else called global approaches to climate change, especially with wheat production systems that have similarities to our systems all around the world. We can share, learn from one another, contribute, and develop something bigger than the REACCH project. And that's what we were kind of setting out to do. It's big, nothing like ambition, but that's what we set out to do in that project, and develop a plan for maintaining the vitality and utility of such a network, and establish a protocol for sharing approaches to integrated research, outreach, and policy to improve climate resilience. Cereal systems everywhere, and contribute to greater sustainability of cereal production systems in semi-arid regions and global food security. That's what we set out to do. We had a great time, and we learned about a lot of different approaches and challenges around the world. And there's one picture from my telephone about what the conference looked like. But there were some outcomes that you should know about and you can be involved with. In fact, that first bullet point, or the intent of the project, can be realized, because it's not a conference that's over, quite. So first, the Wheat Initiative is an international effort to coordinate wheat research around the world. It's a G20-sponsored effort. It has a number of expert working groups, wheat information systems, wheat breeding methods and strategies, which is kind of where they started. Like the genome of wheat, this huge challenge, how to use that internationally. Well, as a result of our conference, and there's a new one, this one, the Wheat Agronomy Expert Working Group. That's a new part of the Wheat Initiative. Brian Bieras, Bill Pan, John Kierkegaard, and I were able to get it accepted as a new expert working group. You can join if you want. I would recommend, if you're continuing as a wheat worker, you want to be in there, especially since the objectives of this, if you read what this one's about, it's about what REACCH was about. It's about looking at the systems from an agronomic perspective, where we need to do the integration across all the disciplines in order to have the system work. If you're a member of the Agronomy Society of America, the Wheat Initiative Agronomists Community of Interest has just been established. Jerry Hatfield and Brian Bieras and me and a few others have got this going. This is the community aligned with this expert working group. So if you're a member of ASA and you want to be helping to transmit some of what we've learned into the international arena, it's a very good way to do it. Still a small group. I think there's like 48 people in this community of interest right now, maybe. Oh, no, there's nobody in this. There's 48 people in the expert working group, and there will be, I don't know. Think about joining that. Regionally, we hope to leave a legacy from REACCH that pulls in, some projects are ending, but pulls in new projects and existing projects into something where we stay connected. And as you heard from Dave, our great opportunity here is the long-term agricultural research network and the Cook Agronomy Farm. But so we can think regionally, we can think internationally to try to influence all this work with what we have been doing in REACCH. Are there any empiricists in the room? Yeah. So I don't know if I took a chance. Dave couldn't say anything about this because he is ARS, but you may be aware that, as came up in the press conference today, that there's some new challenges to doing the kind of work, potentially new challenges to doing the kind of work we want to do, and much other work that pertains to science influencing policy. So if you're concerned about that, here's something. This was featured in Science, and I really like. This was called the Scientist March on Washington, but Science magazines call it the Empiricists March on Washington. I really like that. It's very inclusive because scientists are empiricists, but so is half the population of the USA. You know, most people really value and practice empiricism. So, and I don't know about most people, maybe 51%. I'm still confident. But that's a big population, and that's, we can fill them all up. So I didn't want to forget our triptych because now you see that this is really a random set of slides. But when we're talking about synthesis and integration, I'm inspired by, and have been, the students in the project who started us, made sure we recognize that the synthesis can be very broad. And that can be true going forward, too. We can, the humanities and the sciences interface productively, new kinds of thinking. Maybe that's a global thing. And finally, aphids. As a fashion nod to the presentation we had before. But also this is as a little advertising. This is part of a Science Meets Art exhibition that's going to be opening at the Pritchard Gallery tomorrow. And it's probably going to be perennial, something like this. There's interest at WSU in these kind of things too, so you can be involved. Why am I doing all that? I just wanted to say this stuff, so I'm sorry if it's not logical. But, and the sequence really should back up because we'll take a break now, and our plan for the discussion is to really think more about what next and what kind of synthesis activities are ongoing, could be ongoing, how do we support them, and then what are the gaps in those. And there's a number here, but it's 3:30, so let's just see what Diane says to do next.